What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ty Moore Tech. I'm Ty Moore, and today we're in a different part of the garage. So things look a little bit different, but we're still talking about technology. Let's go. You may or may not have realized Apple had a big event recently. And they announced some new products. They also announced some tweaks that they're making to existing stuff. I wanted to go through a brief overview, kind of everything that they talked about, go into a little bit of detail on some things I think you might be interested in, and then recap with some of the stuff that I thought was really cool about the event. First thing that they talked about was the Apple Card. If you don't know what the Apple Card is, it's an Apple credit card. So everything's encrypted. It works a lot better with your phone because Apple has an ecosystem. All kinds of things. All the Apple products all work well together, so Apple Card is no different. The app keeps track of like what kind of stuff you buy, and it gives you all kinds of cool information inside the app. If you're not interested, you're not interested. But it's a really neat thing. They added family sharing to that, so now anybody over the age of 13 can also use the Apple Card and can kind of be involved in the same thing. It's really pretty neat. They'll have separate credit scores on that, the way I understood it. But it's a neat credit card feature. They're adding some things to it, kind of shaking things up a little bit. Along with that, they added optional spending limits. So kind of like how you can change stuff for your kids from your phone on their phone, you can adjust that and let your kids use it, but have certain spending limits so you can track a little bit more, control a little bit more if your kids are using that. Kind of a neat idea. The second thing that Apple announced at their event was the podcast app. And so they're tweaking some things on the podcast app as it pertains to podcasters and channels and things like that. So they're adding channels, they're adding subscriptions where you get different content, maybe more ad-free listening, that sort of a thing. But some tweaking to the app itself. You'll notice some changes if you update to iOS 14.5. And you'll see some of those things rolling out as they get going with that. Apple has been this free podcast platform for a long time, which has enabled a lot of people to get into podcasting. I'm not exactly sure how these changes will affect podcasters. I have a buddy who has a podcast, and I'll ask him questions about it. And if you guys are really interested in that and would like to see a video on that, let me know, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. The next thing that Apple introduced, and this is something I'm pretty excited about. In fact, I've gone ahead and ordered this thing, is AirTags. If you don't know anything about these little tracker things that have come out, there's a company called Tile, there's a company called Chipolo, there's a few other companies who are doing this, but what it is it's a little plastic tag with a battery inside of it that you attach to your keys, your luggage, your backpack, anything that you don't want to lose track of. And through an app on your phone, you can track that little thing. So you can call it keys, and if it's attached to your keys, you'll know where your keys are at. If you lose them in a park, you don't know what's going on, you can look it up on your phone. AirTags have some cool features that will be a little bit better for AirTags and iPhone users than some of those other things will be. I'm going to do a deeper dive into AirTags and those Tile trackers, those other companies that make those, in an upcoming video. But this is a really neat feature that if you haven't watched the announcement, you might want to start looking into AirTags. But I'll have a video coming up here soon describing that a little bit better and explaining why you're probably going to want something like it. The next thing Apple announced is the new iMac. So the iMac is Apple's desktop computer. They have had lots of different variations of this in the past. You may remember from years ago, they had these like bubble colored computers, and they're kind of hearkening back to that. The last model of the iMac had really thin bezels. So at the edge of the computer, it was really very narrow, and the back was kind of domed a little bit. It came out, maybe 3-4 inches to fit all of the hardware in there. This year, they announced for the iMac, it is wicked thin, 11.5 millimeters thin, which is insane how thin that is. It's like a giant iPad connected to your desktop. So fascinating, really cool. that they can get it that thin. I was a little disappointed in it. The colors are meh. If you want a iMac that's got colors to it, maybe you want like an accent piece in your office or something, that's fine. I don't. I like the sort of black or silver or white that they always go with. But it made me think that they're definitely going to be coming out with a Pro version. Because not only are the colors meh, like I don't love the colors, but they have a big chin still on the bottom. If you don't know what the chin is, it's like when you're looking at the front of it, you've got the screen, and then at the bottom, like a big metal front to the computer. And so you look at TVs now, and there's no edges. It's like glass screen all the way to the edge. And so it seems kind of silly that they left such a big bezel on the bottom, such a big chin, and then the bezels on the sides are white. People don't love that. So I'm almost certain they're going to be coming out with like an iMac Pro, which is going to have way better internals, and I would bet they're going to do a lot to shrink that chin on the front. So if you're excited about a new iMac, but you want to spend some money on like a really nice iMac, I would wait a little bit to see what they announce with the new iMacs that have to be coming out later this year. A couple things about it, though, that were really slick. Number one, it's a magnetic charging port on the back of it. So I've raved about MagSafe on the iPhone 12s. That is actually a feature that they had on MacBook Pros years ago, where it like magnetized onto the side of the computer and charged that way instead of plugging in a port, because if somebody trips over the cord and yanks it out, that magnetic thing would just pop off. Whereas sticking something into your computer risks snapping it if that gets jerked out of there. So they're going back to a sort of magnetic charger on an iMac, which is super slick. I think that'll be cool. Another thing about these iMacs is the Ethernet port is not on the computer. If I said to you, how would you plug in Ethernet onto your computer if the computer itself did not have an Ethernet port? I would say I have no idea. It's just going to rely on Wi-Fi? I don't know. No, so your iMac is always going to be plugged in. And that power cord goes back to a power brick like they have with all their stuff. You have this big brick that draws power. And on the power brick is your Ethernet port. I thought that was genius. So part of it is the screen is so thin that they can't stick a lot of ports on it. The other thing is, if you can take that port and put it in the power brick, now your Ethernet cable isn't coming all the way up and cluttering the back of your desk with all these cords. Now it's down on the floor in that power brick. I think that's really neat. I'm glad to see that feature and look forward to seeing that in the upcoming stuff that they're doing. One thing going back to the thinness of this iMac is that the port for the headphones, so your headphone jack, is not straight into the computer like it used to be. The reason for that is that the headphone jack, like your headphone, the male end of your headphone jack, is too long that it would go all the way through the computer. The iMac is so thin that the headphone jack would not be able to go into it. It would come out the other side. So they have it on the side going into the iMac. I just think that's crazy. Look at a headphone jack and how narrow that is, and the iMac is more narrow than that. The next thing that Apple announced is the iPad Pro. There's the iPad Pro 11-inch and a 12.9-inch. Both of them have in them the M1 chip. If you don't know anything about the M1 chip, it's wicked fast. So Apple is getting to a place more and more where they're making all of their own stuff, all their own hardware inside of their computers. So up until this last year, they were using Intel as a company to make their chips, their processors for their computers. They started making their own processors, so it's an M1 chip for their MacBooks and their iMacs. They just this year put it into the iPad Pro, which is insane. So the M1 is way faster than the Intel chips, and it's just way more efficient, uses a lot less power, creates a lot less heat, and it's nuts that it's going into an iPad. It's going to make them really fast. I've watched a lot of different reviews on the new iPad Pros, and the contention seems to be that the iPad Pro is not going to use all the capabilities of that M1 chip. And so, they're dancing with the iPad being a computer, but there's just certain things that a tablet is never going to be able to do that you can do on a computer. So it might be overpowered. It might not be able to use all that power. And for your average user who's just using their iPad to even edit videos, there's just not a lot of need for that M1 chip. But it's going to be sweet. If you're looking for an iPad that's going to last you 5 to 10 years, I would wait and get one with an M1 chip, because from now on everything is going to be made for that M1 chip and the speed that thing's going to produce. The big differences between the 11-inch and the 12.9-inch are going to be storage size and a wicked nice screen on the 12.9-inch. So the 11-inch, you're not going to get as nice a screen, you're not going to get as large a storage options or RAM, which is going to help you process more things more quickly. The 12.9-inch is going to do those things more quickly, but it's quite a bit more expensive than the 11-inch. If you're just looking for an iPad that's going to last you for a long time to do random stuff, watching movies, even editing some videos, using it for YouTube, searching the internet, that sort of thing, that 11-inch is going to be just fine. But if you want that giant screen, it's going to be beautiful. Something to think about. The next thing that they talked about at the Apple event was the Apple TV 4K. They've had a 4K Apple TV already. This one has a few added capabilities. They don't update the Apple TV too much year over year. I have one that's 1080p that we still use because our television is still 1080p, so why would I have a 4K Apple TV? I think the 4K would be sweet. But there are some updates to the new Apple TV 4K that are kind of cool. You can get a different remote for it. Some people don't love the remote. I like the remote just fine. But there are some buttons on there that make a little bit more sense. There's a back button instead of a menu button. There's a spinny wheel around the outside of it, kind of like the old iPods. So the remote is a little bit different. I love our Apple TV. I would highly recommend an Apple TV because with everything else that Apple does, your Apple products work incredibly well with other Apple products. So screen mirroring, showing the screen from your phone onto your TV is super easy. The navigating through it, it connects to everything. You can play music through it. It's just really cool. I love using our Apple TV over anything else on our television. So if you don't have an Apple TV, I would highly recommend one. And the last and final thing that Apple announced at their big event was a purple iPhone 12. I mean, it's pretty if you like purple. But it's an iPhone 12 or 12 mini in purple. So it's not like the nicest iPhone. And it's purple. So I'm not going to get a purple iPhone 12, but if you have been waiting for an iPhone 12 and you love purple, this would be a really good option for you. That is it. This has been the recap of that Apple event for the sake of giving you information that maybe you didn't have before. I hope it uncomplicated some things that are coming up for you, and as you see those announcements, you'll know a little bit more about them. If you have questions about any of those particular things, let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions down in the comments below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. Click that subscribe button. And then when you do, click that bell, and that will give you notifications every time I post a new video. And I'm just here uncomplicating your complicated technology. So come back, watch some videos, and I will uncomplicate the crap out of your complicated crap. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. That feels weird coming out of my mouth. iPods. You remember iPods? Holy cow. That was a long time ago. iPods. Say iPods. It sounds weird. There's so many other I and pod things. Podcasts, AirPods, iPhone, iMac, iPad. iPods sounds so weird. Man, iPods.